If you tuned in on this video, it's because you're interested in changing your thermostat on a 3400 SFI. On a scale from 1 to 5, how hard it is or mechanically inclined you need to be, I would say a 3. Okay. On that note, let's get started. To change the thermostat, I simply raised the vehicle a little bit high so I could actually slip underneath and open or close the valve at the bottom of the radiator. To change the thermostat, you need access to it. So I simply started with removing the pin that holds the surplus of liquid, and then I moved on to the piping. So to remove the pipe or the rubber that joins the intake to the filter box, there's 2 clamps, a couple wires, and a vacuum line. So with that removed, I just have to wiggle it out and stretch the rubber, and then you get to the air box and the filter. So now that the air box and the parts are removed, you can actually see where the thermostat housing is and the lower bolt, which is the hardest to remove out of the 2. It's a 13 millimeter. So underneath the housing, I installed a cloth so it would pick up the bolt if it would have fell. And the first one I remove is the hardest one, and then I moved on to the clip that holds the water line to the housing itself. Once that was done, it was just a simple matter of removing the easiest bolt of them. First I tried with a extension and a ratchet that was a 3/8 with a union and a 13 socket, and then I moved down to a 1/4 inch ratchet extension U-joint and a 13 millimeter socket at the end. That worked awesome. Once I removed the bolt, it was just a matter of pulling the housing out and popping the thermostat out. And there you go. Before reinstalling the thermostat housing, I just did a little bit of cleaning because it had some corrosion on aluminum and it looks white when you look at it, so took care of that, and then made a hole on my thermostat just to help for prevent airlock into my cylinder heads or my block. Before reinstalling the line, the rubber line, I just need to clean it because the corrosion that was left behind from the metal part that was there for the housing. And also I cleaned the where the thermostat was sitting. Once ready to reinstall, I made sure that the hole I drilled on my thermostat was sitting at 12 o'clock, so right at the top, so the air bubble could actually go through. So basically this is what it looks like when it's installed in place before you put the housing. Perfect. I'm ready for the housing and the 2 bolts that holds the housing in place. So being careful when I reinstalled the housing, not to move the thermostat, I installed the first bolt hand tight. I just use a piece of cardboard or Scott towel to squeeze the bolt into my socket. That prevented from falling on the floor, and that helped me install my bolt in through the housing to the intake. And that was as tight as I could by hand, and then I went on to install the bottom bolt or the rear one towards the firewall, and that one is the tricky one. So with the bolt at the tip of my fingers, I try to put it in place, and this is where your dexterity will come into play. Once I thought I had it in place, I just moved the housing to make sure that the threads were straight, and then I used the screwdriver to hold the head of the bolt in place and confirm that bolt was not going cross-thread, because you don't want to start cross-threading that bolt anyway. So now I'm holding the piece in there with the screwdriver, and here what it looks like, and it's right there. It's not that easy to get to. So since my camera is really small, I give you guys a picture where it's located, right behind the exhaust, and you'll get a better view. So to screw the bolt in, I use the tip of my fingers, and to help me turn it, I used my long screwdriver and pushed on the corner of the bolt, and that got me to tighten it as much as I can. And then when I was all the way in, I used the 13mm wrench. A normal wrench will fit in there. You can only get just one-sided of the wrench every time, so maybe a 1/16 of a third. So that takes a little bit of time. You don't get room to put a torque wrench, obviously, so as tight as I could, I tightened it. Once I was happy, it was just a matter of tightening the top one and confirming there was no leak. Before installing the filter, I just confirmed that it was not clogged. Clean the air box at the bottom because all the debris was still there, and I'll save you guys that time. Then it was just rebuttoning the stuff back in. So attaching the antifreeze line, so the top line, back to the housing, putting my filter, air filter, the air filter box, and the intake hose that attached from the intake box to the intake, and connecting the vacuum line and also the electronics. And off camera, I reinstalled the overflow of antifreeze, basically the reservoir. It's just one line and one plastic clip, and the two metal clip that holds onto the crossbeam. This is a trick I used in the past. Is just a rubber line that was removed from an old vehicle. It sits really tight into the in hole for the radiator, and what it does, it helps you remove the bubbles. You just fill it as much as you can. So once it's filled as much as I could, I re-plugged the battery because I didn't want to do any work on the vehicle with the battery plugged in, because it's got a remote start. I quickly removed loosened the bleeders, and that hose, what it does, it prevents from having airlocks. It push pressure on the liquid to push the air out. So if you got any bubbles, it tends to come out pretty easy. So having the vehicle to run, you can see the liquid there. It starts bubbling. You want to raise the temperature until the fan will start, and confirm that the thermostat will open. To know that it opens, the top line will come hot, so the temperature of the engine will run through the top line. So that's how you know that the thermostat is opening. So once happy that there's no more bubble or no airlock, I just simply remove my line and close the bleeders. Once happy with that, I just remove that line, put the cap back on, and replenish the overflow, and that's it. That easy. Since I kind of did a mess, I'm gonna clean my mess with spraying water from a water bottle with a little bit of soap, and that we're cleaning up so I can check if there's any leaks in the later dates. So this will conclude the video on changing the thermostat on 3400. Hope this helped, and if it did, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. And if you do put a thumbs down, please give me a little comments of why, if anything I could have done differently. So I guess I'll see you on the next one.